crisis in Kenya, the terror threat crippling tourism. In the interview, Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga.
Mr. Odinga, you're the opposition leader in Kenya. Right now, you're on a political trip through Germany to promote your country, to convince investors to come to Kenya. What are you telling German businessmen? Why should they invest in Kenya?
Well, investing in Kenya gives one access to a market of over 150 million people, which is good. Secondly, as you know, that Kenya is liberalizing. This is a process which was started when I was the Prime Minister. That also offers a lot of other opportunities. Like there's special economic zones which are being established right now, which will offer investors very good opportunities. Kenya is trying to diversify the economy through value addition to its raw materials which it is producing.
You spent some 8 years in the German Democratic Republic, a state that doesn't exist anymore. How do you see today's unified Germany? What is about Germany now that most strikes you? Well, comparing to your time before.
You know, actually, when I lived here as a foreigner, I did not have any restrictions. So I knew both sides of Germany. I knew how painful it was for the people to be separated. People having relatives on the other side whom they could never see. I used to be sent to go and meet relatives and take letters and also come back with presents on the eastern side of Germany. When the wall eventually crumbled, it was like a magic had actually taken place. So I'm very happy and grateful to the German people that they've been able to unite and become one again within my lifetime.
I have read that when you were a university student in East Germany, you were attracted to Maoist ideas. Later on, you named your firstborn son Fidel after the Cuban president Fidel Castro. How would you describe your politics nowadays?
Well, I was not a Maoist as it were. You know, in those young, youthful days, you know, there was the Vietnam War at that time, which really polarized the relationship in the world because many people were dying in Vietnam. Those were days of student activism, and these ideas of international solidarity was very appealing to the students. But at that time, the U.S. imperialism, which was seen as being an aggressor, that idea was very appealing to the students. Then Vietnam became independent, as you know, and many things changed. The Soviet Union became then the imperialists in our view, when the U.S. More or less transformed itself and became more humane in dealing with the rest of the world. And there was also a lot of violation of human rights within the Soviet empire itself. So since that time, my politics have changed.
Let's jump some 20, 30 years ahead. You tried twice to become Kenyan president, Kenyan head of state. Do you still want to become president? Will you be running for office again?
Yes, you see, I got myself involved in a lot of struggle in Kenya. My father was himself involved in this political struggle for democratization. He had been the vice president of the country, but disagreed with the president and formed an opposition party, which was banned by the government, and he was himself arrested and put in political detention. So that is the condition under which I went back to Kenya. I ended up in political detention I became a member of parliament, and then eventually I became a candidate for the presidency. Right now I'm leading the major opposition movement in the country, and if my party and my coalition nominate me for the elections, of course I will run. But it's not my priority right now. My preoccupation is to organize my party, my coalition, to make it strong, and also to ensure that the electoral infrastructure is overhauled so that there can be a truly free and fair elections without any kind of rigging.
The result of the last presidential elections last year was so close that you asked the Kenyan court to order a recount. Political crises like that usually mean tourists are less keen to visit a country. How important, in general, is tourism for the economy of your country?
Because of the dispute, there was a lot of violence, and many people died. Many people lost their lives. Over 1,300 people were killed. 500,000 people were displaced. And this is what we tried to avoid last time round. That's why we accepted the Supreme Court ruling. Tourism, because it's very critical, very important to the Kenyan economy.
Recently, tourist bookings dropped sharply following a string of attacks by the Islamist Al-Shabaab militia. In June, they killed some 62 people in attacks close to tourist resorts. What should Kenya do to fight terrorism effectively?
Well, you know that our situation is complicated because we share a common border with Somalia, which has not had a stable regime since 1960. That's nearly 24 years. So you have got a population of people who are now over 20 years of age who have never known peace in Somalia. It is, of course, a frightening situation. When I was Prime Minister, we ordered our troops to move to the border to secure our borders against infiltration by the Al-Shabaab.
Right now there are some 4,000 Kenyan soldiers which hold parts of Somalia. Shall the government send more soldiers, more troops to safeguard this buffer zone against the influx of terrorists?
No, we have been actually talking against this. We have said that our presence there should be limited and that we should help the Somali regime to develop capacity to take over the policing themselves. So we want Somalialization of security within Somalia and come up with a clear timetable of exit from Somalia, like the Americans did in Iraq and also in Afghanistan. So we are not talking about withdrawal from Somalia as such. We are talking about handing over the security to the Somalis, in other words, developing capacity of the Somali people to be able to take responsibility for their country.
If you sum it up, how dangerous is Al-Shabaab to your country? Al-Shabaab recently has threatened to conquer all of Kenya.
Yeah, Al-Shabaab is a very dangerous movement. But as you know, they have already signed an agreement with Al-Qaeda. So they're part of the international terrorism organization. And that is how they get their supplies in terms of cash and also weapons. They have been carrying retaliatory attacks because Kenyan troops actually inflicted very heavy casualties on Al-Shabaab when we attacked the seaport of Kismayu and liberated it, because that was their main source of supply. Now they are therefore desperate, and in that desperate situation they have resorted to desperate acts of targeting basically civilian population. But our view is that we should not surrender. We must basically be more vigilant in dealing with these internal attacks. On the other hand, we would like the international community to play their part in containing this spread of terrorism in that region.
When you left Kenya to go to East Germany, your country was still a British colony. Nowadays, some 50 years after independence, does the colonial past still play an important role in Kenya?
After independence, the relationship between Kenya and Britain normalized. So the relationship between a master and a servant, that's the colonizer and the colonized, changed and became a partnership. So these days we enjoy a very good relationship with Britain. It's one of our development partners. And likewise also with unified Germany. But Germany actually did assist us even in these days of the struggle, the second liberation. The German diplomatic mission in Kenya was very supportive of our efforts as the progressive Kenyans who are fighting for democratization of our country, for a repeal of Section 2A of our Constitution, to allow for formation of other political parties. So we have enjoyed some very positive relationship with Germany, first West Germany at that time, and now United Federal Republic of Germany.
Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister of Kenya, now the opposition leader in Nairobi, thank you very much for joining us on Deutsche Welle.
Thank you. Thank you.